Greetings, comrades. Let's continue on with our reading of Inventing Reality by Michael Parenti. Today we're covering Chapter 8, The Media Fight the Red Menace. This is a very long chapter, so this video is going to be long. I'm going to talk fast. Stick with me here, okay? There are 6 sections here, starting with Section 1, Enter the Red Menace. So, the 19th century, this is Karl Marx's time. Already, the U.S. was like, whoa, 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 we don't like what this man is talking about. Anything communism, socialism, anarchy was considered a danger to the American way of life. If it is not capitalism, it is dangerous to the U.S. Anything anti-capitalist is portrayed as anti-American, and anything that helps the poor is communism. So then, 1917 happens, the Bolshevik Revolution, and the U.S. freaks the fuck out. The U.S., the British, and the French invaded the USSR in 1919 in an attempt to overthrow the Bolsheviks. Luckily, they failed. At the same time, mass strikes are happening in the U.S. 1920 is the Palmer raids, where leftists and trade unionists were arrested for being Reds, for being radical. And at the same time, elected socialists in the U.S. were denied their seats. They just would not swear them into office. Very, very afraid of the Red Menace. And then, of course, the bourgeoisie was praising the rise of these fascists, Hitler and Mussolini, as like, yay, these guys are going to be great for their country. Section 2, the Cold War, 1947, is the Truman Doctrine, and the press really start to propagate this Cold War and downplay this desire that the Soviet Union had to come to the negotiating table and end these hostilities. They didn't want to talk about that. It was obvious, they like war and they like capitalism, so anything that the Soviets do was bad or ignored completely. Cold War, though, was really good for the U.S. economy, and this is really where we started to have this defense industry-focused economy. Like, when we spend money on this, these workers are working and getting paid, and we really became this defense manufacturing economy. In 1945, 34% of the U.S. workforce was unionized, and then came the Taft-Hartley Act in 1947, and this allowed for right-to-work laws to come into play. Strikes were outlawed, and workers, especially unionists, had to take a no-communist oath, right? I'm not a communist, I promise. At the time, the CIO purged about 25% of its members for being dirty Reds. And let's see, Section 3, the creation of Joe McCarthy. This motherfucker, Republican from Wisconsin, and he was given such a platform by the press. They loved this guy. They were complicit and sympathetic to his goal and his actions to go after and expose the communists in the government, in the unions, and in Hollywood. Section 4, rational hysteria. As mentioned earlier, U.S. anti-communism is not new. It's been around since the industrial struggles of the 1800s. And the U.S. anti-communism is deliberate. It's not a thing that naturally came about in the working class here. Of course not, right? If our working class understood what socialism was, they would be fucking into it. So this is something that was deliberately imposed on us by the government, the business class, and the media, right? It served a real and rational purpose of suppressing and discrediting militant labor and suppressing and discrediting any anti-capitalist viewpoints. Here we have what is called the Red Peril, where we're limiting labor power, distracting from the crises of capitalism. Shit's already going wrong because capitalism does not work for the working class. But we're not looking at that. The media is not going to cover those things. And public support for the military budget is still increasing at this time because of this Cold War propaganda that is being pushed. And the U.S., is getting it support for intervention for the capitalist benefit in the third world, right? So this is the rise of imperialism. Section 5, twists and turns. We see the rise of Red China, and so we have the USSR, we have Cuba, and we have Angola, all going on at this time. And so China starts to do some of their market reforms under Deng, and the US was super into that. They gave Deng the Time Man of the Year for like opening up some markets, literally just save their economy. Reagan said that the goal of the USSR is to impose a one world socialist or communist state, and he would refer to the Soviet Union as the Soviet Empire, right? So using this language to manipulate how people think of these economic systems and these other countries. I have another video I posted yesterday of a quote from this chapter, and you should go and read that. And then section 6, celebrating the collapse of communism. So from 1989, around the time that the Berlin Wall came down, until 1991, the illegal dissolution of the Soviet Union, the US media was like all over that shit. They were like, ooh, problems in the Soviet Union, let's cover all of it. So they were very, very into it. He goes into a bit about Lithuania here, not a country I knew or know a whole lot about, but they were the second fascist state after Italy. Fun for them. But then they became part of the Soviet Union. But when the Soviet Union fell, the fascists came right back, and the media, the US media, was like, hell yeah, democracy. Women were oppressed again, unemployment rates skyrocketed. Eastern Europe suffered a lot in the 90s because of the fall of the Soviet Union. The US, of course, was interfering in Eastern European elections, and according to the US media, if the communists win, then the election was not free or fair. They must have cheated. But when the US-backed puppets win, free and fair election. Same as it ever was, same as it still is now. Thanks for listening. Cheers.